the Falcons are playing on Monday night. We need to move this gut reaction to Tuesday morning, so it worked out pretty well. And gut reaction from last night. First of all, I'm Scott Kennedy, your host. Nick Kendell will be joining us shortly. He comes in about 10, 15 minutes. We'll be going for about 35, 40 minutes this morning as we break down not just the Atlanta Falcons New York Jets game, but the bigger picture, which is how is this team shaping up? How are some of the players that you're hoping will make a step up? How are they doing? How is the new quarterback looking? That type of stuff. Because as I was on my way to drop my kids off at school this morning, my son said, "Did they end up winning?" I said, "No." And he was like, "Well, that figures." I'm like, "No, that's this is different. This is preseason. This is the first half of this game. The ones and twos looked fantastic. The Atlanta Falcons first team offense, first team defense, even some of the backups looked very, very good." And I want to get into that, including some of the specific players. I want to say good morning to Joe. Joe is in the chat already this morning. We're a little bit earlier than usual, so it might be a little bit later arriving crowd. And I also shared this stream to a bunch of the Falcons Facebook groups. So if you're joining from there, say hey. Make sure you hit that like button and join us. We are live every Monday at 8:45 and every Wednesday at 9. So far, we could be adding that as we go along. So good morning, Joe. Appreciate you being here. And as you check in, again, say hi in the chat. This is a lot more fun when it's interactive. But reactions to the game, it's like the score is incidental in a game like this. You really want to know, how did player X look? How did this player look? Not necessarily, how did he end up losing the game? I don't really care, honestly. But watching, first impressions and gut reaction, I'll start with the quarterback. I feel like everybody starts with a quarterback, but in this case, we're going to start with Marcus Mariota and his play. And Marcus Mariota was sharp, razor sharp. He had some help, obviously, because that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. I actually took a screenshot of his touchdown pass, which I'll share here in just a moment. But he got going with, and we'll start here with Joe. He says, let's start with the underthrown ball to start the game by Mariota. Joe, that was the one that goes to Kyle Pitts for a long game. And if he gets it out there a little bit farther, that is a touchdown. It was more of a timing thing. If you watch the replay of it, Mariota hitches just a little bit, which is going to sap some of his velocity and some of his able to get the ball downfield. That also might be one of the reasons he was so wide open. I think Kyle Pitts called the defensive back scared pedaling, which is kind of funny for backpedaling. Said he was scared pedaling. He threw a little, shoulder fake on him. The guy breaks down and he's right by him. When he's going straight back, if he's got his eyes at the backfield at all, and you get that little hitch from Mariota, that might be enough to help too. So yeah, it was underthrown a little bit, but I thought considering he wasn't able to hit his whole body into it after that initial hitch, a nice play to open the game for sure. One-on-one coverage on the outside. And let me tell you, I like this crew for the most part. They talk too much about the Jets. I was actually going to open up with, welcome to the Falcons show, since you watched the Jets show on ESPN last night. But some of the things that I wanted to say, they were pointing out on that. Like when they showed the graphic of Kyle Pitts' receiving yards, he had a little over 1,000 yards. And when over 900 of it is coming either in the slot or wide receiver, someone says, well, is he really a tight end? That's a fair point. Is he a wide receiver? Is he tight end? When he comes time to get paid, he's going to want to be a wide receiver. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. When we're talking about, the first tight end to do this, first tight end to do that. When he's on the line, he's blocking. When he's out wide, he's a weapon. Plain and simple. Jeremy Sean coming in this morning. Says, good morning, Scott. Good morning, Jeremy. Appreciate you being here. So yeah, it was a little bit of an underthrown ball, but a good play. I'm perfectly happy with that play from Mariota and Pitts. If you get single coverage with Pitts on the outside against a cornerback that's giving up not just 6 inches in height on him, but probably a foot in reach also, man, throw the ball up to the big man. So I was very happy with that play. And watching Mariota, we know he can run. I watched him play in high school, And the first time I saw him, because I didn't get out to Hawaii that year, was actually in South Carolina in the offense-defense all-star game over at Myrtle Beach. Ironically, the two quarterbacks there were Johnny Manziel and Marcus Mariota, who went on to much better careers than anybody that at the Under Armour All-American game or the Army All-American game. So you just never know, especially at that position. And I was like, man, this kid can fly. So we knew he can run. I was very impressed yesterday with his ability to throw. I mean, we know he can. He was very accurate on the run. His rolling to the right, his rolling to the left, and throwing the ball and moving the pocket was very, very good. Now, on that touchdown play, I want to open up this. I took a screenshot of this I want to share. And when Nick gets in here, we'll talk about it a little bit because I'm a trench player person. I watch the trenches. I'm old school in the fact that I believe if you can win up front, if you win the trenches, you're going to win the game. It's changed a little bit through time as they've turned this into more of a 7-on-7 game and the certain things you can't do. But if you look over right here, if you can see where I'm circling with my mouse, that's where the ball goes to Zacchaeus. And you can't see him yet, but you know who knows where he's going to be there is Marcus Mariota knows where he's going to be there because look at this protection. You've got your interior line squash the defensive tackles. You've got Caleb McGarry over here with, I believe, right guard was probably Lindstrom. I'm thinking this is probably Dahlman and Elijah Wilkinson here in the center, and Jake Matthews handling his guys. So a 4-man rush, 1v1. You don't have this kind of look in 7v7 for goodness sakes. So this was just the epitome of a beautiful play. Mariota throws a ball so good, it actually hits the left inside shoulder pad of Zacchaeus. I mean, he had to catch it because it stuck in his armpit. It was how good of a throw this was for Mariota. So just as Joe comes in here and says, you know, that play, the line was beautiful. Yes, it was. And let me get back to a little bit more of the good here. Caleb McGarry, 2 games in a row, has been good. Not just okay for Caleb McGarry. He has been good. The 2 biggest question marks you're going into on this season on the Atlanta Falcons, again, I start in the trenches. I don't care about the wide receivers if you can't block. If you can't run the ball because you can't run block, and if you can't protect the passer because you can't pass block, I don't care who your wide receivers are. So let's start there. I don't care what kind of engine you've got if your tires are flat. So let's start there at the base, at the foundation. Left tackle Jake Matthews, solid. Not spectacular, not $20 million a year. He's overpaid. Forget that. He's a solid player. We move over to last year to Jalen Mayfield was at left guard. We got a good look at Jalen Mayfield again in this game, and it's ugly. You watch the game and you wonder, how did they win 7 games with Jalen Mayfield at left guard? I feel like he's regressed. Like he's even gotten it. It's like, was he? I know he was bad last year, but my goodness, was he this bad last year? He was pretty bad. Elijah Wilkinson has been, again, not an all-pro, but serviceable. If he gets average left guard play, that's a massive improvement. And he was good. He was very good. I know you're going against the Jets 2s. I know that. Keep some perspective. It's preseason. I don't care. You're going to go against Jets 2s during the course of a game. It's not like the offense where you're basically starting the same 5 offensive linemen and the quarterback. Those 6 guys don't leave the field for the offense for the most part. You rotate your skill players who are doing all the running. The defense is going to rotate a lot. So you're going to see a lot of those guys over the course of a game. And the offensive line handled them. Drew Dahlman was the starting center this time. Last week it was Matt Hennessy. This time it was Drew Dahlman, second-year pro out of Stanford. Why do I want to say Boston College? No, it was Stanford. Pretty sure on that one. Second-year man at center. He was getting a solid push on the inside. Chris Lindstrom was a beast. I focused so much on McGarry. The second time I watched the second half, tried to watch more of the offensive line. Chris Lindstrom was nasty. He was really good. And McGarry was really good also. So he's using that size and that wingspan that even if he's not getting the first engagement, he's chipping guys, just knocking them off balance. Give your skill players a chance to make a move around some players. So Caleb McGarry was very good. So the offensive line was good, very good. Want to flip over to the defensive side of the ball, talking about the good as well. There is a name. I feel like we're all gonna, let me close out this window here. There's a name and a number that we're all going to have to start remembering, because he's taken a huge step up. He was one of my bigger question marks from last year when I said, yeah, he started and played a lot as a rookie, but he wasn't very good. Does that mean you had a good draft class or not? The jury's out. Taquan Graham, defensive lineman, defensive tackle, big end in a 3-4, moved inside into a 4-3. Guess what? It didn't matter. When they tried to block, when the Jets tried to block him with one guy yesterday, it was they couldn't do it. There was a play I saw right off the bat. It was a second play from scrimmage, and I took the notes down. I said, on the second play from defense, the Jets try and run wide right. Now, I don't know if it was a design run right. I'd have to run left. It was the right side of the Falcons defense. I'd have to watch it again, but it felt like it was designed run left. Anthony Rush at nose guard takes two guys on and holds his ground, even pushes them back just a little bit. Beautiful. Thing of beauty. That's your job, man. It's not glamorous, but if you can occupy two defensive linemen right away like that, you are doing your job. Great job. And then next to him on his right was Taquan Graham. He knocked his guy 3 yards into the backfield. Made the running back have to veer deeper instead of coming short straight at that left tackle. He ended up veering deeper. And if you remember last year, one of the bigger complaints I had about Fabian Moreau was his inability to seal an edge at all. At all. He turned around when he started getting blocked by a wide receiver. He basically would turn and run for the frickin' stance. It drove me nuts. That's an effort play. That's a mindset. Well, guess who ends up making the tackle? Cornerback Casey Hayward comes in and makes a tackle on that play. So Nick should be here. Nick should be here shortly. I guess I didn't send him a link, so let me send him a link real quick. One moment. Let me see how to do that here. I complained a lot last year about Fabian Moreau, and Casey Hayward, I said, was going to be a very big upgrade. And again, from what I saw real quick, that was the case. So Nick should be here any minute. I guess I didn't send him a link to come in and join us. So we'll take care of that here real quick. And then let's see. Blizzard Mike comes in on YouTube. He says, we lost the same old ugly Falcons fashion last night, but it's preseason. Go Falcons. So again, the good for me is Taquan Graham is turning into a really good defensive lineman. If we go through where this team has the biggest questions, left guard, Elijah Wilkinson seems to be much better. Right tackle, interior options. Caleb McGarry is stepping up his game. Corner, opposite A.J. Terrell, good signing. Casey Hayward is playing well. Defensive line, Anthony Rush has looked solid. So far. Again, I know it's not always against the ones, but Taquan Graham is stepping up internally and making a very good, doing very well. Let me answer Nick real quick and make sure he knows that I sent his link on Twitter link. Thank you. And then he'll be coming in shortly. Apologize to those of you listening after the fact. Technical difficulties. He should be able just to come in and hit enter, but you know how things go. I'll tell you another defensive player that caught my attention was Amir Abdullah. There were a bunch of them, not just, again, I'm watching the trench play a lot. Okay, former whatever. I'm sure he played for the Bears at some point. Everybody did. It's pretty safe to say that, oh yeah, former Bear. He was a big man, over 300 pounds, got a solid push, and then at the end of the it was either in the first quarter or first play of the second quarter. Right in that, the Jets decided to try and run a screen pass. It was almost like a middle screen. So the players, you release the linemen and let them come free. And it's really a good, if you're watching the NFL Combine, they always do the agility drills when they're having them run corners. It's the 3-cone is the best drill to simulate this. But Abdullah comes in free, recognizes and cuts 90 degrees on a dime and chases down and makes a tackle on a delayed screen. It's a 300-pound defensive lineman. I was like, yes, sir. Yes, please. Very happy with what I saw from Amir Abdullah as well. I think I was a little hard at the beginning, going back to the ugly on Jalen Mayfield. 4th and goal, and Jalen Mayfield is called for a procedure penalty. I'm like, oh God, come on, man. Takes him out of scoring, out of a 4th and goal at the 1, end up kicking a field goal. When watching the replay, Arthur Smith jumped Desmond Ridder and Matt Hennessy, the center. So I think that's where it was, because as I watched the replay, Jermaine Afridi jumped as well. So there was some snap trouble, which happens all the time when you change quarterbacks. Playing offense can be very hard. So I was willing to give Mayfield a little bit of a pass on that one. But as far as the ugly goes, the penalties. The penalties were a little on the ridiculous side. Let me see. How much did it end up being? I think it ended up being about 13 penalties in the 3rd quarter. So let me check the box. Team stats, penalties. It was at the end of the 3rd quarter. The Falcons, I think, were at 10 for like 110 yards. They finished with 13 penalties for 121 yards. That is ugly. Now, again, going back to Blizzard, it was a loss, but it wasn't necessarily a loss, because the what we saw in the first half was the players that we will see. They look good. They looked really good. I don't care if it was the Jets twos. What's not ugly is Nick Kendell coming in, though, and I want to say hello to Nick and thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry, I forgot to send you that link. For some reason, I think you can just come in and see it, and then whatever.
Morning.
Welcome in, Nick. This is a gut reaction. So we'll get right to it. We're not going to waste any time. Watching the game last night, what were some of the quick thoughts, like the first things you thought of when you saw this game?
Kyle Pitts is an alien. I know it wasn't a lot of games, but the play he had on Bryce Hall, right? They have a Breece Hall and a Bryce Hall there. I think it was Bryce Hall, the cornerback for the Jets, was unbelievable. And then I saw a Twitter thread after that, like, which skill position players would you take to start a franchise with over Kyle Pitts right now? And the only 2 names that came to mind for me were Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. After that, it's probably Kyle Pitts. So, man, he looked...
Yeah, and those are arguable.
Yeah, those are arguable. I think given what we saw last year from Chase, it'd be hard to take Kyle Pitts over him right now. But again,
but it's in the argument. Like yes, so you've heard me use a phrase. I don't argue levels of elite. If you said Kyle Pitts and I said Jamar Chase, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. I get that. That's a good choice.
Yeah. So that play that he made, the size that he has and the ability to sink his hips and change directions, I mean, just unbelievable. I thought both quarterbacks looked really good as well. Mariota running around making some plays with his arm, and maybe it's a matter of time this season for when, especially with the Falcons will be on defense and the offensive line overall compared to most of their opponents. Is it a matter of time until Desmond Ridder gets the nod? Because he looked really good again as well. He's been the best rookie I've seen so far this season, I think, at quarterback.
Yeah, I think if Mariota plays any semblance of where he was playing yesterday, then he'll have the job. If there's other parts that cause, if he starts losing games, again, this is preseason. I thought the crew last night was a little talked too much about New York. But I'm aware of that. I know the refs are always out to get us and the announcers are biased. Those are universal truths among fans. So I'm aware of that and still was like, okay, enough of the Jets, fellas. Good Lord, especially in the first half when the Falcons were beating the brakes off them. And Orlovsky would say, hey, let's give the Falcons credit, as he would, they'd realize that all they'd said was Jets, Jets, Jets for the first, for the last 5 minutes of any given time. But as far as, Mariota goes, if he plays like he did, I think the job will be his. But Ridder has looked solid, and that should present you lots of good options in the draft next year. Lots of good options. Let's say hello to some other folks that have come in as the The stream has unwound just a little bit. Albert Knoppers has come in and said hello. And Dana Miller coming in, saying our first and seconds were great. And Dave as well comes in and says, Scott, do you think we'll see Coach Peace on the sidelines this season, or does it really matter? I don't know what he's been like in the past. He's been a coordinator for years and years and years and years. And if he's more comfortable on the sidelines, by God, he's going to be on the sidelines. That's just who he is. If this is something new, then maybe he goes back. But I don't know enough about him to know if that's where he normally is. And Albert says, good morning, Nick, as well.
Good morning.
And Jamal comes in. He says, good morning, fellas. People are sleeping on the Jets. They have a lot of quality depth. Their 2s and 1s our team are 3s and 2s on some teams. And they can't keep everybody. Hopefully we'll get a few of them. Kind of felt like that watching the Bills and Broncos. What they're watching that game, which we'll talk about here. Nick and I will do Broncos for breakfast in 20 minutes over on Mile High Huddle. But they have 16 defensive linemen, and they'll probably keep 9. If you stash 2 of those guys on the practice squad, then there's going to be 5 of them that will be available. That's how I felt watching the Bills. So there's some depth in the state of New York on those defensive lines for sure, Nick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thought the Falcons held their own pretty well until the very end of the game. It kind of, not to take words out of your mouth, but falconing it up towards the end, kind of letting the game, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. But I mean, you're talking about the backups there at the end of the game. So some discipline issues. I think Arthur Smith said as much as well. But overall, I mean, the final score doesn't say the Falcons won, but I thought they looked like the better team, and they just let it kind of slip away at the end, which is by far the least important part of these preseason games. Yeah,
again, like I said, I'm not too worried. I think Blizzard came in and said, we lost in the same old ugly way. And you weren't here, Nick, but I said I was taking my son and daughter up to the bus stop, and they're like, oh yeah, of course they lost. I'm like, no, this is different. This is different. As far as I'm concerned, this was a win. Why? Because they had some questions. We don't have the answers until the live bullets start flying. And I'm careful to say that on YouTube. You have to watch what you're saying. But Kayla McGarry was good. Elijah Wilkinson was good. And at times the Falcons line couldn't block their way out of a wet paper bag last year. So even if they're beating up on 2s, you're going to face a lot of 2s in the NFL over the course of a 70-play, 65-play game. You're going to face second stringers. So that's okay with me. This was definitely a step in the right direction. The quarterback play was good. The offensive line play was good. And again, Taquan Graham is answering a big question. That's 2 games in a row where he has looked like arguably the best defender on the field for the Falcons.
Yeah, he stood out again. Really good to see him out of the University of Texas, second-year player, needing somebody to step up with the likes of,
Grady Jarrett.
Grady Jarrett
for sure. Yep.
Yeah, Grady Jarrett needing some help. Also, given Grady Jarrett's size, his age, I mean, where the game is going right now, it's a lot more gap and a half technique across the front rather than, the pin your ears back 3 technique looks. Getting somebody out there next to him will do a lot of good for that entire defensive line. I'll tell you, watching the Broncos game, bringing it back, I'm like, man, I could use myself a Graham on this Broncos defensive line right now as well, because they are getting bullied. And I thought Graham, held his own, did a good job playing the run lanes. And
what was nice about it, Nick, is he was playing both positions. He was playing 3-4 end and he was playing 4-3 tackle, and he was a standout in both. Very, very pleased. Very pleased. He got brought up this week from Arthur Smith. Someone asked about him because I thought he had a good game. Someone asked about him in the press conference, and I posted the video of him on my YouTube channel because I'm like, shoot, Arthur Smith kind of gets mad when you ask him about individual players. Yeah. So the fact that he was able to say, yeah, he's done really well, looks like he has taken that next step, a big leap, I think he called it. I'm like, well, hell, that's gushing for Arthur Smith, but he's deserved it. Edwin Rosario coming in on Facebook. Good morning, Edwin. He says, good morning. Desmond Ridder was calm, collective, and sharp with his passes. Desmond Ridder was really good. Arm strength was there. Accuracy was there. There's a couple rookie things in there with cadence and timing. So what? second preseason game. He got his ass chewed on that 4th and goal. Him and Hennessy both did. And then you could see one where, the broadcast guys caught it, where he didn't let the guys in motion give them time to get set. And they panned Arthur Smith. The ESPN, they did a really good job with this game yesterday, including the broadcast stuff. Because then they panned Arthur Smith, and Arthur Smith, you read his lips. He says, "You got to let him get set. Come on, man." It was basic stuff. So what, Edwin? I'm not too worried about that. Those are easy things to fix. So, Mark Schrader coming in on Facebook. Good morning, Mark. Appreciate you being here. And if I'm not mistaken, Mark has gotten us kicked off with some stars. So thank you. Stars are a good way to show some appreciation for the effort. And Mark is always a huge supporter of the show. So thank you very much. And Jason L comes in and says, Ritter's talent is undeniable. I didn't watch as much college last year as I used to in the past. Of course, I used to watch, 10 games a weekend. But I didn't really see him until Senior Bowl. I saw flashes against Alabama and stuff. And, Alabama's made many good quarterbacks look bad at the college level. But when I was at the Senior Bowl, I was like, this might be my favorite quarterback here. Malik Willis was there. Mac Jones was the year before. Who was the guy? Kenny Pickett was there. There were several good ones there, but he had a nice, smooth throwing motion, good size, and could run. Who do you remind me a lot of? Marcus Mariota, Nick.
Yeah. No, maybe not number 2 overall Mariota, but if you put him in that Oregon system, that was, hyper speed with Chip Kelly. Maybe we're talking a different type of game here. And obviously Mariota hasn't lived up to the number 2 overall slot as well. So I could see that. Ritter, yeah, he looked really good. Calm. I think he's definitely, you can tell that he started a lot of games in college. There are some things that he still needs to work on, but I thought his accuracy, I think, has looked better than what I saw at Cincinnati as well. Sometimes he's a little bit scattershot at Cincinnati. It wasn't really just a singular issue. It was just he wasn't very precise throw to throw. But he had some pretty good, accurate throws in this game and some tight windows as well. So, again, I think it's a matter of time to see him out there this year. Now, do you want to marry yourself to a 3rd-round drafted quarterback? Mm-hmm. It depending on how he looks this year, maybe you have a conversation about that. And what other quarterbacks are available. But right now, you got to be intrigued in the very least. And if you can go a totally different route roster building this team than what you've had the last few years where you had very little resources and a very expensive quarterback. You go the cost-controlled, cheap quarterback route.
Golly, talk about cheap, a 3rd-round quarterback.
Yeah, like nothing comparatively.
That's pennies, pennies. And then having and then you don't, if you decide not, then you don't have to go quarterback with your 1st-round pick, and you can trade up, trade down, and then you've got $100 million in the bank to go find some free agents. This next year is going to, and again, it's preseason. It was fun listening to Orlovsky talk about being with the Lions on that 0-16 team. So they went 4-0. We thought we were going to be good, and then we were 0-16. Yes, it's a preseason, but what am I looking for? I'm looking for signs of improvement. And last year's team, they were 7-10, and people will look at that and say, okay, they should, if they're improving, the record should improve. Not necessarily. That team last year wasn't very good. They played some other really bad teams and had a good quarterback, a good kicker, Cordero Patterson and Kyle Pitts, and eked out 7 wins. They could actually have a worse record, but be better. Have a gaping hole at left guard, not being a sieve on the right side of their defensive line, getting more than 18 sacks. And speaking of which, the Ogundeji roughing the passer, were you able to see that one?
Yeah, that was a rough call, I think, also, but it's preseason. So if it was the regular season, maybe you'd want to fight that one a little bit more. But they're kind of, I think the refs are going through as much like, okay, this is kind of what it looks like. Let's work even the calls out.
and I started typing. I started typing before I heard the announcers. I said the roughing the passer call in Ogundeji was bunk. And I said the running back cut blocks him, he falls into his legs. Where's he supposed to go? And then I hear Steve Levy and them talk about it, and they're like, wait a minute. they're not supposed to call this anymore. I was like, okay, thanks, guys. You've heard me say before, I kind of judge a crew based on, are they saying what I'm thinking? Are they answering the questions that I have?
Yep.
So I thought, for the most part, they did good. There's no way that should be a roughing the passer penalty on him. Speaking of accuracy, you mentioned Desmond Ridder, 10 of 13 for 143 yards. And strangely enough, no rushing yards, which is kind of cool. We know he can sit back in the pocket and throw. He's got, as Jason says, Ritter's talent is undeniable. He does have a lot of talent. And he's a steal in the third round. Nick, when you and I were doing mock drafts, we didn't have any problem taking him with the Falcons' second round pick that they used at about 36, probably closer to 40 on Arnold Ebiketie. The fact they were able to get Ebiketie and Ridder, nice job. Very pleased with this.
Yeah, no, I think the probably the best case, you don't want to put any limitations on a guy, but the best case scenario you're hoping for here is a guy drafted this area who's a good athlete. Accuracy was good, but maybe not elite, and playing on a team that was, not elite as well. I know they made the playoffs, but again, it's the Atlantic 10. I can't the US.
I don't know. It's all either the Big 10 or SEC right now. So
they're joining the Big 12. Cincinnati is. Excuse me, ACC or AAC, I think they were. Anyway, I think the pathway you're hoping for here with Ridder is a Dak Prescott early on coming in and being like, okay, well, we're seeing the flashes. He is an athlete, but he doesn't have to be an athlete. It's, it's a get out of jail card. He can use that to pick up some yards. He can use that to extend plays. He is intelligent, seems poised. We might have something here. So again, putting the Dak Prescott tag on him this early would be malpractice, because Dak Prescott is a top 10, 12 quarterback in football and has proven it multiple times. And also the nest around Dak Prescott to come into the league was a lot different than what Ridder's going to have coming in.
Right.
Obviously, the Cowboys had the best offensive line in football. Ezekiel Elliott traded for Amari Cooper. I mean, that team was perfect for young quarterback to come in.
We can discuss this again at another time. We're getting close to. We got about 5 or 6 minutes here. But when you were talking about, you used the Cincinnati Bengals as a reference, not now, but before. Andy Dalton was a good quarterback until they had to give him a second contract. Yeah. Is that kind of where the Dak Prescott is? It's like Dak Prescott is good, but he's not a $30 million quarterback. That ends up hurting your team a little bit based on what you're able to. And we can discuss that in the future. But if you can get a 10 to 12 quarterback for third round money for the next 4 years, you can build a hell of a roster. Again, we're at 40% we're missing 40% of the roster in Atlanta right now based on salary cap snafus, including Deion Jones, who we may or may not see again. But if you include Matt Ryan, Dante Fowler, Julio Jones, and Deion Jones, those 4 guys count 40% of your salary cap for this year. You're missing 40% of your team. So if you're able to hold down the cost with a quarterback, as you're saying, with Desmond Ridder, and ends up becoming a starter, and dump what's 40, it's about $80 million back into your team. Look out. That could be a lot of fun. And Richie Rich comes in, with some, again, we're looking for, don't necessarily care about wins and losses in the preseason, but it's more about the process. How did the team look? And Richie says, you can't fix the third string. That was extremely hard to watch. There was a penalty. I ended up turning it off, Richie, at the beginning of the fourth. I was like, I don't need to see a penalty every play. This isn't football anymore. These are guys that we'll be writing about in a long line of, these are the guys who have been cut from the Falcons 80 to get to the 53 next Tuesday. The cut down day. So speaking of which, cut down day is today, Nick, where they go from 85 to 80. I don't know how well the back end of the roster, but have you looked and seen at some of them? And I can bail you out on this because I've got some guys in mind. Have you looked and seen some of the guys you think could be on the bubble? And also one of the bubble guys that becomes real interested to me is Jared Bernhardt, the receiver, return man, special teams lacrosse player. From what I've seen, man, I'd find a spot on this team for this kid, even if it's the practice squad and you flex him a few times. he's tough. You got to be half insane to play lacrosse at that level.
Yeah.
I love some of the comps for lacrosse players. Our own Patrick Kearney is one of them from Atlanta. Great player for the Falcons for a long time. And obviously the one and only Jim Brown was an All-American lacrosse player. He had, and Bernhardt isn't just, a nice story. He had 3 catches for 67 yards and was returning kicks yesterday. He's an athlete who's learning to play this game.
Yeah, no, he's still. I think he'll probably end up on the practice squad. I don't know the back end of the Falcons roster enough to have a strong opinion on this, but Rick Leonard was one who I thought was beat pretty bad in every
Left
rep I've
tackle,
seen from him.
when they came in, and Leonard at left tackle and Mayfield at left guard, it was ugly.
Yep,
it was ugly.
And he's I don't think he has very much skin in this. He's battling for the swing tackle spot. If you keep him on the roster, that's a concern for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do they need him in camp long enough to go one more week? Maybe. We'll see. I don't think he makes a roster at all. Richard said I felt bad for Felipe. I did too. That said, I said when he was coming out, he shouldn't be drafted as a quarterback, and he wasn't drafted as a quarterback. The more I see him play quarterback, the more I'm glad he's playing tight end, because he is a very good athlete. And I don't know if you noticed him out there. I saw 15 flashing a few times on special teams.
Yeah.
So he's going to do, I think he's got a spot on this roster, Richie, just because he's an emergency quarterback, jumbo athlete that can do a bunch of different things. One of the guys that Tease Tabor, one of the safeties, he's listed 3rd string safety. And again, like I said, you can say former Chicago Bear on everybody that is on the back end of this roster. He didn't look good at all. And former Bronco Mike Ford, I think, a defensive back, could be on the bubble. When you start looking at these players, you see a bunch of running backs. There's still 6 running backs out there. There's 6 tight ends. It's a little thin on the offensive line. There's 3 deep each way. They're not carrying 16 guys, and it's a little thin on the defensive line. So you're not really quite sure. They're not going to carry all of those linebackers. I really like what I've seen from Dorian Etheridge, but is he going to be able to keep a spot again or not? That will be close, but I'm not a huge fan of Tease Tabor and Mike Ford in the defensive secondary.
Yeah, no, Mike Ford especially, he was beat like a drum that first game. Been bouncing around the league for a bit. He's probably a good call as well.
So, and Dave says, I think it was by design that the Falcons quarterbacks didn't run last night. Well, for the most part, they didn't have to, which is also something you're looking for. Let's see. They were 16 of 23 for 255 yards and a touchdown. Ritter and Mariota. You're not going to run if you don't have to. So it was you don't want them running much anyway. Something as simple. They showed the replay of Zach Wilson, non-contact, just put a cut on it and he goes. Guys, protect yourselves. Mariota came out in that first play last week and kind of went all hero on him. I think he probably was told, hey, don't be a hero. He got that message early. The starters played a good deal on both sides of the ball, which, frankly, I've enjoyed. Mm-hmm. As we head towards the final game of the season, of the preseason this week, what are you looking for? What are we looking for to finish here?
Looking for the offensive line to continue to work together. I think this is a team that the running game is going to need to function to help those quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be a super high volume passing game. So the offensive line continuing to work together, seeing what the running back split looks like. I thought Tyler Algier looked like the best of the running backs in this game. Is he going to be one who can take that second spot and be the hammer to the lightning of Cordell Patterson? Mm-hmm. We'll see. Quadre Olson's interesting as well. And then just the quarterback battle. Can Desmond Ridder continue to look so talented that there's maybe like the disparity between him and Mariota is like, okay, Mariota, we really like what you're doing. We appreciate you. We need to find out what we have in the young kid. So it really, Desmond Ridder show, what's going on there? That's the biggest question this team has going forward.
One more takeaway before we get out of here. D. Alford has been a name that we've heard a lot in camp, and he was playing the nickel cornerback spot. as Isaiah Oliver still recovers from his injury. And I'm just watching this and watching D out there making a nice open field tackle, playing really well, and thinking, okay, how much better can this defense be? We've talked about Taquan Graham being a massive upgrade over, well, Taquan Graham making a big step up in his second year. Lorenzo Carter was getting a push. Arnold Ebiketie was doing some good things. The edge is going to be better. Let's look at the cornerbacks. My goodness. Last year, you had AJ Terrell, really good. You had Fabian Moreau, really bad. And after Isaiah Oliver went down, you had Avery Williams, who has been moved to running back, trying to chase around CeeDee Lamb in the Dallas Cowboys game. Or you dropped in Richie Grant. Now you'll have D. Alford. You'll have Isaiah Oliver. So you'll have some players at that spot that are just going to be so much better that, again, you're missing almost half your team still. Again, I made that point. This is preseason, but this team will be better this year. Across the board, they will be better this year. And they should be more fun to watch because they won't have as many this guy shouldn't be in the NFL players on the field like they did last year.
Yeah. Yep, should be better. I'm excited to watch this team this year. Obviously, getting to know them better and better. And feels like they are not a rudderless ship anymore, which kind of was even though it's 7-10 team last year, didn't feel like they had direction or like purpose direction. So now pictures coming together, going to be impressive to see and interesting to see how this team building process goes.
Survive. That was the goal last year, was survive. On that note, we're going to get out of here. Nick and I are going to hop on over to Mile High Huddle and talk some Broncos, but we will be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern to talk our regular Wednesday Forging the Falcons. So that's when we plan on seeing you. And thank you, Mark Schrader, for coming in with the stars, our superstar, our star, or with the stars, our superstar supporter this morning, and everybody else for participating in the chat. And we will see you tomorrow morning.